Rob, you can probably put up a screenshot. You don't have to leave your video on until you need to speak to council. Perfect. Glenn, you're here, you're there, you're everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to have any food, so.
Does that mean you're going to be hangry during this meeting?
Well, you know what? Yeah, it's a bit much, actually. Yeah, to be honest. Thanks for asking. I can't eat in front of 406.
We are live on YouTube, folks.
That's fine. I can't eat in front of 406 people, so I'll just sit here.
And we're just waiting for Councillor Bridgman to turn on her video. And Councillor Edwards, I believe.
My apologies, I was here.
Okay, we have it from the powers that be that we are allowed to officially call this meeting to order at 1:33 p.m. I see Councillor Nishikawa there. We are missing right now Councillor Mazan and Councillor Zavitz, whose cameras are on, but we don't see them. So they are apparently probably in the room. And we are just currently missing Councillor Edwards from our Zoom screen, but otherwise we're all here, as well as members of our senior management team. I also today want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous people. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. Their stewardship throughout the ages is recognized. And I will comment that it is, as it happened within the last 30 days since our meeting, the tragedy out west of the found lost lives of 215 Indigenous children at a public school. And we need to reconcile. We need to acknowledge where we are today, and we need to continue to rebuild relationships. So I leave that with you all. Today's meeting is being live streamed, recorded at the Township website and YouTube. Participation in the open meeting today, consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We had our public comment email. We did not receive any email for today's meeting. We do, however, have a supplementary agenda that was issued yesterday. We have some invited delegations regarding Bala Bridge. We have a notice of motion regarding the National 3-Digit Suicide and Crisis Hotline. We also have Mr. Fauner regarding Lang Mirsky application, and Marie Poirier regarding Fangrid application. And with that, I will ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest today. I'm not seeing any, so thank you for that. We're going to, we had an invited delegation at 1:30, but we're going to try and go through a couple of things right now, and then we'll try and jump ahead to that. We have a number of committee meeting minutes regarding our general finance of May 12th, council meeting minutes, planning committee on the 13th of May, and also May 20th, a special planning committee meeting minutes and action items. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding those meeting minutes? Notice of correction. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Kelly and Councillor Mazan, who are both on screen. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the June 16th, 2021 consent agenda, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Number 1, the May 12th, 2021 General Finance Committee meeting minutes and action items 1 to 10. May 12th council minutes, May 13th Planning Committee minutes and action items 1 and 2, and the May 28th Special Planning Committee minutes and action item 1. Any further comments on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that to me seems carried. Thank you all very much. Okay, we'll see. Look at that. We're at 1:37. We can jump right ahead. And I'm going to go, it'll be item 8C on our report, and that's a report from Director of Financial Services regarding our insurance renewal. But we also have an invited delegation. Have they been let into the room yet? Deputy Clerk, we'll let them in, and that is Megan Callahan.
There's somebody with the name iPhone.
That might be Megan with an iPhone. I'm not sure. Can they raise a hand if they can hear us? We'll see if that's her or not. Is that Megan?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, Director Donaldson, and maybe you'd like to introduce Megan first of all, and she can kind of give us an overview, and then we'll go back to your report. Mark?
Great, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, members of council. I do have in today's agenda, you'll see there's a report with respect to our renewal for our 2021-22 insurance package for the township. And to give us some overview on the insurance market and the things that are happening today, I'd like to introduce Megan Callahan. She's Vice President, Public Sector National Practice Leader at BFL Canada. And there's a presentation that will appear on the screen. And welcome to Megan to council.
Megan, welcome. We'll get you to unmute your microphone, and the floor will be yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you for having me. I have to say, after 15 months of doing this, I was about to talk having not unmuted myself. So clearly I don't learn lessons very easily. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the insurance market. I presented to council, I think this time last year. I know it's a riveting topic of conversation for everyone, but it's important conversations to have on an annual basis because the insurance market goes through cycles, and currently we are continuing to see a hard market cycle. I can't see the slide, so if we don't mind skipping to the third slide where it says the 2021 Canadian insurance market.
Yeah, hang on one second. We're not actually sharing the screen yet. So when we do so, I think you will see that.
Okay, perfect.
I'm just going to pull that up and you should see the shared. Either that or Councilor Edwards is going to show it now. There we go. There we go. Megan, over to you again.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I think we all know about BFL Canada. I don't want to bore you with that. I think it's just important to note in today's climate and in global conditions that BFL is a Canadian-owned insurance brokerage. We operate in Canada. We have offices right across the country, and we have all of our decisions and all of our strategy made here in Canada. So the next slide talks a little bit about the insurance marketplace and provides an overview of a market cycle timeline. When we talk about insurance markets, there are two cycles. There are hard markets and there are soft markets. And then in between the two, we call that transition mode or correction mode. The last hard market we saw was a short time period in 2001, and that was triggered by the terrorist attacks on 9/11. And then the global market saw an extended soft market period of 2002 to 2019. 2019, we started to see the correction, and then 2020, we were into a hard market. For Q1 and Q2 of 2021, we continue to see the hard market and anticipate that that will continue on through the rest of the year. The next slide, please. This gives an overview of the definitions of a hard market versus a soft market. And really, you know, when we talk about the two cycles, you can see that they're really just the polar opposites of each other. And the question always is, what tips the scales from a soft market to a hard market? Insurers have basically two sources of income. They have the premiums they collect, and then they have their investment income that they can do with their profits. And for a long time, from 2002 to 2019, we saw that, you know, premiums were collected, investments were making returns. And as we get closer to 2019, large losses are being suffered by the global market. Investment income still is offsetting underwriting losses, but eventually we get to a point where investment returns are not offsetting the underwriting losses. And that's what tipped us into the hard market in 2020. Certainly COVID-19 has played a role in this from an extension perspective of perhaps making the hard market last longer than we would like. And certainly makes for all businesses, it is a struggle and a challenge to operate in this new world. But I think it's important to underline that this hard market was coming prior to COVID-19, and COVID-19 was not a trigger. When we look at a hard market where we're at right now, insurers are focusing on profitability and bottom line results. They're returning to disciplined underwriting. And I think those are the real critical pieces for us. If we want to go to the next slide. This touches about what makes this hard market different from previous cycles. This isn't the first hard market that we've experienced in the insurance industry and as, you know, in purchasers of insurance, but certainly this has some different elements than perhaps we have seen in the past. Previous hard market cycles were characterized by insurers taking a blanket approach to premium and deductible increases. And while we're seeing that in 2020, the other hard market cycles prior to 2020, insurers didn't necessarily remove themselves or exit from specific classes of business in order to improve their balance sheets, whereas this current market cycle, insurers are taking a hard look at their various portfolios and programs and deciding, is this a class of business we're good at? Is this a class of business that can be profitable for us? Is this the class of business that we want to continue to write? Insurers are taking a much more nuanced approach, critically reviewing specific segments. Improved data and analytics are being utilized in the underwriting process to better understand classes of business. While data and analytics, we always hear about actuaries and crunching of the numbers. Certainly they have been used in the past, but as our technology improves, the data analytics improve, and insurers are really able to drill down and see how certain classes of business or certain types of business or certain types of products perform over the long haul. So the current market cycle has been marked by increased premiums, increased deductibles, restricted terms, and limited capacity. And we talk about limited capacity, that goes back to the top bullet points where insurers are looking at various segments of business to determine if they want to continue to offer that type of products to those types of clients. So that's the overview of the market. Unfortunately, I'm here again talking about a hard market cycle. We are in a hard market currently. I don't have a crystal ball, and certainly I think anyone, whether you're an economist, a banker, no one has a crystal ball at this point as to what this is going to look like. We've never emerged from a pandemic in recent history like what we've gone through with COVID-19. But certainly the experts are saying that this hard market, anticipate it continuing throughout 2021 and potentially into 2022. Now, when they talk about the years or the length of time for the hard market, it could be that it becomes a bit more nuanced. And yes, it's still hard market, but does it impact certain policies, certain products, or certain classes of business? So while they say it's going to be a hard market for the next little while, we don't really know what that means, because the hard market in 2021 is a bit different than it was in 2020. And I think that's sort of reflected in the renewal for Muskoka Lakes. So if we can go to the next slide, this is for Muskoka Lakes specifically. So this year, the renewal represents just over a 15% increase from 2020. The lion's share of the increase lies in the auto and property policies. So the liability stayed fairly consistent. I think the primary liability had a 9% increase, and the excess liability had, I think it was an 11 or 12% increase. The lion's share of the increase sits in our property and auto, where we haven't found stability in the pricing yet. And that is targeted not only because of global concerns, when we look at property and the natural catastrophes that are continually experienced year over year by insurers, but also because of individual loss experience. So when we look at the losses right now, we see a correction in the rates, and it's starting to see your loss ratio come down, whereby we're getting in the healthy range. Just as a general rule of thumb, when we look at loss ratios, insurers look at clients that have loss ratios between 0 and 40% as a healthy loss ratio. 40 to 60%, they're starting to think, okay, what's going on? And 60 plus is, okay, let's talk about, is there frequency issues? Is it a severity issue? Is it an exposure issue? So we can see from an auto perspective that in my view, we've got the right rate correction. If losses stay the same, we're sitting in a fairly healthy territory. And property, we're seeing again with the rate correction that loss ratio is coming down again. It was 150% in 2020. With the rate correction this year, as of today, the loss ratio drops down to 120%. The next slide talks about the services that BFL wants to offer over the next year, again, to help target your losses, to help improve your risk profile. So when we go to insurers for premium terms, that we get the very best we can. We talk about things that we can control and things that we can't control. We can't control global hard market conditions, but we can control the risk management and the loss control that we put in place to continually improve your municipality's risk profile. And that allows you in turn to get best results from what the insurance market market offers any given year. And that's my presentation. If there's any questions.
Okay, maybe we'll stop screen sharing. And then we can go back to council. Council, do we see any questions right now? Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Thank you, Megan. That was a really good presentation. I have 3 questions because I'm just sort of curious about this. If I can indulge me, Mayor Harding, how many companies now will insure this class of business compared to, say, 5 years ago? Do you know that?
Yeah, so I would say that currently there are, for your size of municipality, there are 3 programs available. And within those programs are various insurers. If you are a municipality that doesn't carry a $5 million deductible, the best bang for your buck is to access a program of which then has multiple insurers on that panel or in that program. So I would say municipalities that have deductibles of 50,000 and over have access to 4 programs in Ontario. And municipalities that have deductibles under 50,000 have access to 3.
But what would those numbers have been 5 years ago? Were there more programs out in the market then? That's really what I'm asking you.
So there was only one, and it was the reciprocal. So we would only add 1 more to that count. So the nice thing for municipalities is it stayed fairly stable. From at least that there are options out there, whereas for other classes of business, there could be no options. The issue is that when insurers then get punchy around rate, et cetera, there isn't much to explore outside of those 3.
No, I gather that. If I could, Mayor Harding. So what was the increase in our class overall? What's the average increase this year to insurance premiums in our size municipality?
Yeah, so I would say anywhere from 9 to 10% to 30%.
So where are we in that?
So you're sort of sitting at the bottom range at 15%.
Okay, I think it's important we all understand that, because I do understand the hard market and it's really, really difficult. So I'm going to venture that our experience report, I know it looks better, but I'm going to say it's a very small part of what the costing of this premium is. Am I correct on that?
I would say it's probably, it really is 50-50. When you look at each line of business will be different as to how the global markets affected it. I think you're absolutely right from an auto perspective. I think liability, we found some stability. Property, I would say it's 50-50. 1, it's the hard market, and 2, you just have at 120% loss ratio, that puts you in the red flag territory.
So if I could, Mayor Harding, this is a topic dear to my heart, sorry. But so I think what I'm trying to say though, Megan, is that if we had a really good experience rating and we're sitting in that 40%, we're not going to see a massive decrease in our premiums.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make that point too. Okay.
Yeah, correct. You are right. We are, the savings that were once out there and the lien premiums that were once out there are not available to any municipality. And it's really just how little pain can be achieved and this year, rather than, the great savings or sort of the good news story that could have been achieved in previous years.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you, and through you. And in case you can't tell that I don't know anything about insurance, you will as soon as I open my mouth. But I do have a question. Like everything else, does scale provide pricing advantage in this market?
You mean for your individual municipality?
Yeah.
And do you mean by being a part of a program, or the size of your risk?
If we were a much bigger organization, a much bigger municipality, would we find that the proportionate cost of our of our insurance needs would be reduced by virtue of that scale?
So it's interesting in this hard market, it's not necessarily about the size of your municipality, it's about the size of the deductible you're able to absorb. And it is interesting to see that some smaller municipalities can absorb a higher one, whereas some medium-sized municipalities can't entertain a higher one whatsoever. So, but logic would dictate larger municipality can have a larger deductible and therefore can weather the storm a little bit better than a smaller municipality with a smaller deductible. I do have to say that the larger municipalities in 2020, I don't have the stats for 2021, the likes of an Ottawa or a Toronto or a Mississauga saw substantial increases, some seeing, you know, so the city of Ottawa went from 6 million in premium to 11 million in premium. So they saw almost 100% increase. This was all public knowledge in the news. They're not a BFL client. Other ones saw, you know, 146% increase and 186% increase.
Okay, just one quick follow-up. I mean, in lots of other commercial purchasing scenarios, you'll find small purchasers banding together in some sort of buying group or some kind of a pooled purchasing relationship. And I guess where I'm going is there an opportunity for the Township of Muskoka Lakes to work with other similar sized townships or municipalities and get a better effective rate by pooling their purchasing power?
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for it and a business case for that. There are a lot of you know, caveats around that. When Councillor Bridgman asked about the various options or programs insurers available to Ontario and the number difference between now from 5 years ago, the one I noted was OMEX, the Ontario Municipal Insurance Exchange. And that was a reciprocal where that basically is a large pool. And it went into runoff and closed its doors in 2017 because the model wasn't working for a variety of reasons. And so it can work. The key is you have to have a long-term commitment to a pool, you know, because you have to get some years underneath you, collect some reserves, get your, you know, your under deductible claim reserves together. You have to understand that you're all in this together. So from a risk management, loss control, deductible perspective, you've all got to be singing from the same song sheet and have some consistency and understand that if someone has a large loss and that affects the program, that it's going to be divided amongst the group. So yes, it can work, but people need to have a long-term commitment to it of at least 5 years so that it gets off the ground and has a chance to be successful. I think with OMEX, I never worked for OMEX, so I can't comment about, you know, what went on in that organization, but it was created because there were no options for Ontario municipalities. And it was created, and then within a very short time frame, the insurance industry came back in and said, we will offer you the kind of product that you purchased from BFL. And it was, you know, it was at that time more competitive than the reciprocal. And now the reciprocal had to compete because members were going for tender. So that sort of creates that, you know, chicken and the egg, and OMEX really wasn't allowed the time to become a robust organization. So yes, in theory, it can work, but it does take work, and it takes a long-term commitment from members.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. Does BFL recognize the Township of Muskoka Lakes as being a member of the District of Muskoka Buying Group?
Yeah.
What do you mean by the District of Muskoka Buying Group? Well, the mothership is a District of Muskoka and Bracebridge, and so we six, you know, pay a lot of money in there. I would have thought this would have been a perfect opportunity to derive a benefit. Is that the case? Well, currently, right now, all of the municipalities go for tender on a separate timeline and purchase separate policies. through different companies or just yourselves?
The majority of the district is with BFL, yes.
So one would, supplemental, if I might, what would you would presume that we would be getting the best possible pricing that we can? Is that a fair assumption or no?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly believe we're putting a fair pricing in front of each of our Muskoka district clients. If we're looking to achieve real savings and considerable, going back to that pool, as you share, you share limits, you're sharing policies, again, talking about that loss control and deductible is a bit of a different framework. But yes, I believe BFL is offering a competitive price to the township.
That's not really what I said, but yeah, I mean, I guess the thing, if I might, again, thank you through you, Mayor. Just like we buy things every day, and one needs to, check in and make sure that we're getting what I would call excellent value. And if we're not doing it with our group of 6, then I guess we're relying on you to do it for us and trusting that you're giving us the best deal one can arrange.
Well, absolutely. And, I believe that we put fair terms, and not only is it fair terms, our program has paid, consistent losses for the township. I think we've shown to be a partner in regards to, coming to the table and making sure that losses are fairly adjusted, and some fairly large ones through the history. So I think that's also important when looking for a partner. But I completely agree that, you are the stewards of the public purse, and we need to make sure that we're getting you the best price we can.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have a couple of comments, not seeing anyone else. And I guess there's a couple things. Number one, insurance rates. Let's say we have a fleet of 50 vehicles and Bracebridge has a fleet of 50 vehicles. You now need to insure 100 vehicles, even if we are 2. It's really economies of scale versus one individual or not. I'm not sure there's insurance savings. The more vehicles on the road, the greater chance of claim against us. The more people using facilities, the greater chance of a claim against us. In our rates, my one question is, what portion of our rate is controlled by an industry standard, so municipal sector claims against municipalities, and what portion or how much of a portion is against our own personal Township of Muskoka Lakes rating? You've commented on our ratings, then I have a supplemental.
Thank you. That's a great question. And this is going to be a very frustrating answer. It will be dependent on the line of coverage. So for your liability exposures, for your motor vehicle accidents on your roads or a slip and fall on your sidewalk, it really is based on the class of business, that specific business, and the losses that are experienced. I mean, certainly every insurer has a bit of a benchmark in regards to, how they want to rate all liability, but ultimately the bulk of liability would be on municipal exposures and then your individual loss experience. From a property perspective, it's really being driven by market forces right now, the global market, the losses that we're seeing, and that's contributing to then having a very hard look at the construction of the buildings that insurers are underwriting, and looking at frame and that kind of stuff, which tends to actually affect municipalities greatly because we tend to have a lot of buildings on our property schedules that tend to be less fire resistant than you would a full-blown manufacturing warehouse, et cetera. And from an auto perspective, it really is more on the Canadian experience, and then in Ontario specifically. So auto, I would say, would be almost 50-50, the class of business plus just the standard auto rates in Ontario.
Sorry, before I go to Councillor Jagowitz, one other quick comment or question. You referenced a 9-year trend in the auto industry. We're currently at 120% versus the 150 last year we were at. And you showed it, I think, on property as well. The question I ask is, my personal insurance and my understanding that insurance companies typically only go back 5 years. How come we're going back 9 years in this particular case? And Is that an industry standard or is that a BFL specific?
Yeah, so when you look at your home and auto, that's personal lines. And so my understanding is, not being a specialist in personal lines, yes, they go back 5 years. Up until about 2018, the standard for commercial was a 5-year loss history. Now, going from 2018 onwards, insurers want to see a 10-year loss history. It's not a BFL standard, that's an industry standard now from a commercial perspective.
So hence the reason for additional rates. Councillor Jagowitz, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please don't misunderstand my questions. They're really asking for information.
Absolutely.
Could I call your company, are you like an agent or?
No, we're an insurance broker.
Yes,
An
okay. So
agent usually-
I use the change interchangeably. You represent insurance companies. You take our request and you look at various insurers, and then
Correct.
you make a recommendation to us. So can you tell me how you're compensated? Not you personally, but your company. Is it based on the premiums we pay? Is it based on the type of policy? How does I'm not asking for dollars. I'm just asking for the concept of compensation.
Absolutely. So compensation is through commission.
Based
your
on
premium.
commission, based
your
on the
premium.
premium.
Correct.
So the higher our premium, the more your commission.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So if you're representing 3 or 4 municipalities in the district, you're financially incented to have the premiums higher, although I'm not saying that's what you do. So then the last part was, did you tender our insurance on our behalf this time with various companies? Or how did you go about deciding what's being presented is the best solution?
For municipalities, and back to Councillor Bridgman's initial question around the insurers that are interested or are able to write municipal insurance in Ontario, brokers work with a panel of insurers. And if you are a larger municipality that has a deductible of $1 million or $5 million, there are options where we can go as a broker goes out and finds different insurers. From a municipal sort of mid to small size municipalities, the traditional way to procure insurance is through a tender, and a broker presents their program. Because municipal business is a very difficult class of business, brokers need to have a program to sort of have a critical mass of business in order for insurers to offer coverage. And so we have a panel of insurers that we did change last year. We had some new additions to the property in order to find some stability in our program. And so it's our panel and our program that we've presented to you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jagowitz, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but it raised the supplementary, if I may ask. So as a broker, you're remunerated by the insurance companies or this panel, as you described it. So essentially, your first allegiance would be to that group, would it not?
Not at all. I mean, we need to ensure that we're putting a strong and competitive and comprehensive product in front of our clients. Brokers are not, that's the great thing about a broker, is you're not beholden to insurers. We're here to work for our clients.
So that's the part I didn't understand when you said you work with a panel.
Yeah.
I would have thought you would have taken our requirements and sent out 3 tenders to various people and see what you get back. And it doesn't sound like you actually do that. You just kind of work with a group or something?
Well, what we do is on an annual basis, we look and see, does this panel make sense? Are they offering competitive terms? Can they offer a broad coverage at the right price? And so we're constantly evaluating our panel of insurers. We've had some where we've removed them our panel because they're not making sense sense what we want to offer our clients anymore. But any broker that works for municipal business and has a program, that is how insurance is set up in Ontario for
And
small.
so
to
you're
medium
using the same panel for all your municipal clients. You're not,
Correct.
it's not a panel for us. So you
Correct.
sought out the ones that you believe have the best offering, possibly even the best commissions, who knows, right? And so you're single sourcing essentially our insurance through this panel. Thank you very
Correct.
much. You've answered my question.
Okay. Anybody else right now? Megan, I want to thank you and appreciate you're welcome to stay on. I know that Director Donaldson will get his camera back on because we're going to move ahead to item 8C, I believe it is, a report regarding our insurance renewal. And I know there's also a potential in there that we look at a 2022 request for proposal going forward. So appreciate that. And Megan, I also, I do appreciate your work, and some of my best friends are in the brokerage industry. So understand you are working on our behalf. If we're not satisfied, there's no commission paid anyway. So you have to represent us first of all. Yes, you have a number of other insurance companies that you represent, but the structures are similar depending who it is, and we can pick and choose our broker as we go forward. So thank you for representing us. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think Megan provided a great overview to the market. In the report, there's a table that outlines by liability, by coverage line, what the changes are for each of the coverages line this year. And as noted in the report, or in the presentation, excuse me, and in the report, this year's premium will increase by 15.3%, and including PST will be $988,298. Now we do account for this because our renewal date is July 1st. Half of last year's premium is booked in 2021, and half of this year's premium would be in 2021. So when you take half of last year's policy and this year's renewal, we are under budget, which is good news in terms of our estimate for our 2021 allocation. We also were working with BFL to look at extending the renewal time from July 1st to perhaps the end of September, October 1st. By doing that renewal, that would give us a little bit more certainty when it comes time to budgeting, as opposed to trying to estimate what the increase would be. We would have a little bit more certainty with that. We are continuing to work with BFL. There were some carriers that were open to a 15-month renewal, some that were not at this point. So this is for a 12-month renewal, but there is a possibility we could extend some of these until September 30th of 2022, which would just be proportionately increase. So it'd be 15/12ths of the renewal, as I understand it from what we've been presented by BFL today. And that would be reported this time. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions of Director Donaldson at this point? Councillor Jagowitz.
Sorry to be a pest, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Donaldson, I did read your report, but I missed the line on the recommendation where it says, finally, the staff be instructed to issue a request for proposal for the township's general insurance program for the period commencing July 1st. So if I understand that correctly, when you say general insurance, you mean all the insurance, everything that's in this bundle, and you are then looking for, you're going to issue that to brokers. Is that what you're going to do, not directly to insurance companies? Is that correct?
Director
Your Worship, that is correct, Councillor. So last year for the 2020 renewal, a request or a direction to staff was made to do an RFP for the current year. We did not have an opportunity to do that this year, and that was confirmed last month by General Finance Committee to extend that to the current insurance year, I'll say. So before our next renewal, we'll do an RFP to brokers for all of our insurance coverages that are covered under this general insurance policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Excuse me. Be it resolved that the proposal for municipal insurance coverage submitted by BFL Canada Risk and Insurance Services Inc. for the period July 1st, 2021 to July 1st, 2022 at an annual premium of $988,278 $97.52 inclusive of applicable taxes be accepted, and that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to execute the authorization to bind coverage documented as per the 2021-22 municipal insurance renewal proposal, and any documentation required to implement the insurance policies with BFL Canada Risk and Insurance Services Inc. for the general insurance premium program. And finally, that staff be instructed to issue a request for proposal for the township's general insurance program for the period commencing July 1st, 2022. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I believe we are carried. Thank you very much. Dr. Donaldson, thank you very much. And Megan, if you're still with us, I'm not sure you are, but thank you for your support. Where are we going to go here? I don't think I have any other, I have a couple of delegations, but let's maybe go through our reopening roadmap. Item 8A, and we'll go to the CIO for that report at this particular point.
There we go. Thanks, Your Worship, and good afternoon, members of council. So as the mayor mentioned, this report deals with updates to our reopening framework that was approved by council last summer. As you can imagine, these changes have been necessitated by the province's recent rollout of their reopening roadmap. And although the principles by which decision-making and the reopening plan have not changed, our reopening plan that is, the strategic leadership team has adjusted the phases or steps in the plan to correspond with the provincial roadmap. And you'll note that we took a high-level approach, which provides us flexibility for staff to come back with individual reports on reopening certain buildings or services, pretty much the way we did last year. So you heard from this morning from Jordan Miligan the need for contingency and the fact that things are changing. We don't know what things are going to look like in the fall. And we're in the same boat as it relates to that. And, you know, if we look back over the last year, we saw lots of change back and forth as the public health restrictions were loosened and then tightened as it relates to COVID-19. And I appreciate that we're moving forward with vaccines, but there still is a concern with respect to the Delta variant. So this flexible approach, I think, has served us well with respect to being able to quickly pivot in response to changing provincial direction. Staff believes that the flexible approach will still be needed until there is more certainty with respect to the loosening of public health restrictions. So I'll stop there, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Okay. Council, any questions on this, or we do have a resolution to accept? Let's go to the CIO. First of all, to yourself and our entire staff who are working through a changing framework that really is changing almost hourly. You know, I know that regularly the Premier is going to speak what may happen. We're opening our community centers, we're closing them, we're opening the parks, we're closing them. My hat is off to you for the past 16 months and staff for finding a new way to do business. And I'm thankful that we've all been able to do business in a different way, and generally speaking, been able to service the public. I know that generally speaking, right now, we did about, just for council's edification, we did about 212, if I'm not mistaken, applications and permits for building last year. I think it was about $139 million worth of business. We are on track for double that this year. So it is absolutely insane the amount of work that's going through our development services department. And I know they're all online and in conversation with their chief building officer. I think we are back on track for getting permits issued in an appropriate time. So again, my comments to our staff for working through a changing pandemic to find resolve. But I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that council approve the updated Township Muskoka Lakes Municipal Operations COVID-19 Reopening Framework as attached as Appendix 2 to the report entitled COVID-19 Ontario Reopening Roadmap and dated June 16th, 2021. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Madam Clerk, I see that as unanimous. Again, Mr. CIO, thank you very much for that. I'm going to go back to Director Donaldson to go to 8B, and then we're going to jump back up in the agenda. And that's an award of consulting assignment for IT. Mark, any comments on this? As I introduce it very quickly, and then I'll go to council, see if you have any questions. High level.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. So we did issue the RFP for our IT strategic plan, which has been on our minds for quite a bit. We did receive 6 qualified responses, and we are recommending the highest rated one. We did also solicit some expertise from the town of Huntsville. Their IT manager helped us with the evaluation, so I'd like to acknowledge that and thank him, Ian Parker, for his support on that as well.
Thank you. Any comments from council at this particular point? Council Jagowitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I noticed, is this an unusual way to score proposals? Rather than listing the fees that were quoted as one item, you've given them a 30% weighting and then found some formula to weight them. So you actually didn't look at the lowest bid and see if they were competent. And I just want you could just explain, is this just the new way of evaluating proposals, or is there some reason why it was done in this fashion?
Director Donaldson, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. For a request for a proposal, there typically is more than one component that's evaluated aside from the fee. So the fee is definitely one of them, but it is not a finite, structured proposal that's being tendered. In a tender, there's very specific, uniform pieces for all the bidders. In this case, there can be some fluctuations and some different differentiators between the two that may also make one vendor preferred over another. So this for an RFP wouldn't be uncommon. The weightings can vary. As you can see, we shared the fee structure as the highest rating shared with their approach and their resources, the people that they would actually have doing the work. So not atypical for an RFP, which would be different than a tender itself.
So this is not a supplementary. This is not a fixed price contract. It's 43,910 plus HST plus or minus. Is that what you're saying?
Director Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it would be a fixed price for the price of what they have proposed and the work that they've, how they've structured or their approach to doing the work that we've asked. So we've kind of set out in the proposal, we set out what we were looking to achieve, and through the approach and the time that they're looking at spending and the resources that they're going to dedicate to this project, it would be fixed for this particular engagement with this vendor.
So then, okay, it's just unusual when we get things through Public Works, we always see the pricing. So thank you very much for the explanation.
Again, Director Johnson, maybe you can just sort of, this is the IT consultant component of it. What we're going to expect to get out of this, I think, is probably just a quick overview to help Councillor and Councillor Jagos maybe understand. Their final report will get us to what finish line so that we have a better understanding of what.
Yes, Your Worship. So the purpose of this engagement is to basically have the consultant work with us to develop a strategic plan that basically does a gap analysis of where we are today, what functionalities we have, what infrastructure we have, what software we're using, what is it we want to be able to achieve, how do we best serve our clients, what is that gap, and recommended a roadmap basically that gets us to that point within a 3 to 5 year range. It's a 5-year plan, but there are going to be some targets that will be less than 5 years, but it's going to get us to a place that's going to outline what investments should we be making, where should we be focusing our IT resources, financial resources in our IT infrastructure in order to be able to fulfill some of the objectives in our larger, broader strategic plan around modernization, more efficient ways to work, and how we better serve the clients and our residents.
If I may, then a supplemental to that would be, once that report is provided to council, we will then be able to put out as such an RFP to deliver those IT services as outlined in this report if we agree. correct?
That's correct. That is correct, Your Worship. That's correct. There'll be supplemental actions that will come back to council in order to implement the strategic plan that we'll be doing at this point.
Right, and there may be different suppliers according there that would be more of a specific RFP that potentially lowest price would evaluate or win at that point. Councillor Jagelos, you had a supplemental question, and then I'm going to read the resolution.
Yeah, I'm not trying to belabor the point. It's just, this is a contract for consulting services. It's a fixed price. In my view, we should have been made aware of the bids. That's all. Because obviously whoever does this part will have a leg up on the next part, but that's fine. I'm not unhappy with it. It just seemed unusual. I was just hoping when we bid out, for example, bidding for a bridge reconstruction, we don't take this approach. I really hope we don't get to where the price is just one of the factors, and that because it was a committee, and I'm reading it, I think it was a committee of about 3 people, right, that weighed these factors. Okay. Thank you. I'm satisfied.
Okay. Again, this is a service that's being provided. It's not a detailed A, B, C, D as we would see in 42 cubic yards of gravel in the tender for a road. So I have a resolution that I'm going to read by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the contract for the preparation of an information technology strategic plan be awarded to Blackline Consulting at a cost of $43,910 plus HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any necessary documentation. Any further comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we're carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, Council, we have a notice of motion that we would need 2/3. And it is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mazan, whereas Section 3513 of Township Council Procedural Bylaw 1979 provides that new motions placed on a supplementary agenda shall not be considered or voted on until the next subsequent meeting, except in the consent of 2/3 vote. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Township Council hereby consents to the consideration of a vote of a new motion with respect to the adoption of the National 3-Digit Suicide and Crisis Hotline. There was a note in our GNF package from MP Aitchison on that topic. First, I'll ask, are we in favor, 2/3 in favor of hearing the motion? Madam Clerk, you're satisfied? Thank you very much. I'm not going to get into a lot of debate on this. We saw many letters of correspondence on this. My apologies, this didn't get on the actual regular agenda, so we didn't have to go through these procedures. But our MP, Mr. Aitchison, has asked that this come forward and that local municipalities have the ability to pass it. So I'm just going to read it. It's moved by Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Whereas the federal government has passed a motion to adopt 988, a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline. And whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%. And whereas existing suicide prevention hotlines require the user to remember a 10-digit number and go through directories or be placed on hold. And whereas in 2022, the United States will have in place a national 988 crisis hotline. And whereas the Township of Muskoka Lakes recognizes that this is a significant and important initiative to ensure critical barriers are removed to those in crisis and seeking help. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes endorses this 988 crisis line initiative, and that staff be directed to send a letter indicating such support to our local member of parliament, members of the Legislative Assembly, Federal Minister of Health, the CRTC, and local area municipalities to indicate our support. Anybody comments? I think we all think this is certainly appropriate. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, once again, unanimous. Council, thank you very much for indulging on that. Let me just see where we are here. Supplementary. Oh, Bell Tower. Let's go to Bell Tower, shall we? How are we doing on time? We're only been an hour. Matthew Milligan, Senior Advisor from Bell, I think is here for a temporary cell site presentation. I've never seen a temporary cell site, so I like this idea. Maybe you can set one up outside our township office so our screens don't freeze. Matthew, welcome. We'll get you to unmute your microphone and can give us the Coles notes of a temporary cell.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Do you have the my presentation on the screen?
We don't yet. If you're looking at the screen, we will put it up for you and then let you take it. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. All right, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Matthew Miligan. I'm Senior Advisor for Real Estate at Bell. And I'm here today to ask for council support for the placement of a temporary cell site at the Bala switching station, which is located on Burgess Street. If you want to just go to the next slide. There we go, here's some points here. So if you're not familiar with this property in Bala, it's a 3.5 acre property. It's at the intersection of Burgess Street and Muskoka Road, 169. This is on the north end of town, and most of the property is forested. Oh, sorry, I just lost my presentation here. Most of the property is forested. The property does, the building does front Burgess Street, and it's the function of that building is to provide wireline and internet services to those within the community here. And if you just bear with me one moment, I just lost my my notes here. There. Whoop. Okay. I won't be able to get those back up, but let's talk about the reason for a temporary cell site. It's predominantly due to the unprecedented demand for wireless services, and this is caused by changes in habits due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course the associated emergency orders that have taken place over the last year. People are spending more time, excuse me, people are spending more time at seasonal residences. They're spending more time doing business there. They're going to school there, and they're spending. For many people, they're leaving their home in Toronto or somewhere within the GTA and moving there. They're selling the home. This is where they live now. It's changed all sorts of habits with respect to wireless uses. So Bell's wireless internet product has been very, very successful and has connected many properties that have never been connected before. But the issue that we're having is that there's too many mobile and fixed users competing with a limited amount of bandwidth. And the problem that we have now is that on the wireless internet product, we're no longer able to sell it in the Bala area, at least over the summer, because of the demand for wireless services within the area. So if you call up right now and you want to have a wireless internet product installed on your home or your business or your cottage, we're not unable to do that for now, even though your neighbor next door to the left or to the right may have that service. We're just not able to do it given the bandwidth congestion in Bala at this time until the summer is over. So the temporary cell site will allow for more bandwidth to be placed to be utilized within the Bala area, and that would mean that we would be able to continue to sell wireless internet services over the summer months, and of course that would also mean increased bandwidth for wireless devices. The data speeds that usually start to erode within the summer, that issue would be eliminated within the Bala area. Next slide, please. So this is what a temporary cell site looks like. It is on a trailer. We bring it to the site. We haul it to the site on a truck. On that trailer sits an equipment shelter that stores and houses the radio equipment to power the cell site. The hydropower the power for the site would be received from the power plant that is within the switching station. So we would bring an electrical connection to the temporary cell site. The telescoping mast would extend to a height of, I know it says 30 meters there, but it'll actually extend only to 27 meters in height. And the duration would be from June 25th to October 14th. After which time we would take everything down and we would remove the device from the site. Next slide, please. So here is the proposed location. If you're familiar with this site, it's just behind we essentially put it in the corner, just beyond the parking lot. There is some rock that is at flush, the same grade as the parking lot. It would be placed at that location. There are some 3 guy wire anchors that come down relatively tight to the actual device. They're anchored with concrete blocks, and it would sit there for the duration of the summer until it's no longer needed in the fall. Next slide, please. So here is the view of what it would look like when installed from Burgess, from Burgess Avenue. As you can see, the base, you cannot see the base from the building and the trees that are around there. You can definitely see the mast extending above. But as you can see here, it's got some great ground cover in order to sort of minimize any sort of visual impact from the street. Next slide, please. So in speaking with staff, what we decided is that the best approach would be, prior to coming here, would be to notify residents of what Bell was proposing. And so we did write a letter to the neighboring residents on Burgess Street and on Highway 169, letting them know that this is what Bell had proposed or is proposing. We showed those residents the same photos that we've just shown you. And my contact information was in the letter, and asked anyone if they had any concerns to give me a call or to write me an email. Based on this letter, we only had one response. It was totally unrelated to the actual structure itself. It had to do with, I guess there was a change in numbering on Burgess Avenue at one point. The numbers of houses got changed, as I understand it, and they were wondering if that had something to do with Bell. But I'm not aware of that issue or what it was all about. I did speak to the resident and indicate happy to address any concerns that they might have on the actual temporary cell site, and they indicated that they had no problem or concerns with the proposal. Next slide, please. So the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated emergency orders have brought on many challenges, including providing a sufficient level of wireless capacity in some communities, and this has become a big problem in Bala. So Bala is prepared to address this issue or this deficiency immediately and on an interim basis by providing this temporary cell site from June until October, after which we know that the demand will subside, and that what we can do then is focus on some of the temporary or some of the fixes that we have in order to ensure that this doesn't happen in subsequent years. And I might add, this council certainly has had a hand in assisting us with respect to the Glen Orchard cell site. We were here a couple of months ago seeking your approval, and you did provide concurrence for that site. That would certainly be one of the new sites that would be bringing on our network to take traffic that's currently being directed to our Bala cell site, and we hope to have that in service for 2022. So the temporary cell site is to be installed at this facility. This facility has been used for telecommunication purposes since 1957. We think it's a good location for this temporary purpose. It's obscured by trees and for the existing building. We are asking for your support on this project, and we do look forward to providing residents and visitors with high quality wireless services throughout 2021 and certainly the years beyond. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have on what we're proposing to do here in Bala.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll stop sharing the screen and we'll go back to the, there we go. Council, any questions right now? Councillor Mazan.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, excellent. This is just a quick comment on the duration. I think we just heard this morning that we might be having our Cranberry Festival, which is typically the weekend after, and given everything is now moving to, I just wonder if there's maybe a thought to extend it, or at least work with the Ward 8 councillors to understand if that's an opportunity. I think the date to end it was October 14th. Typically, I think the Cranberry Festival is the weekend after Thanksgiving, so.
Yeah, we do know that there is a spike around the Cranberry Festival, but in previous years, there are definitely people that clear out that are no longer making trips up north. With that said, I mean, if council was willing to If we were willing to consider an amended request till perhaps the end of October, that would allow us some flexibility for me anyway, to speak to our staff, let them know that council was concerned about this event, and potentially allow us to leave it there to provide coverage for this which I know is an important event for the community of Bala. And with respect to a date, I mean, might I suggest October 31st? I'm not sure what date that is on the month. Halloween. I guess I should know that.
October 11th happens to be Thanksgiving. Cranberry Festival would run through the 15th, 16th, 17th of October. So perhaps the end of the month might be a more appropriate date, just to allow us, I guess, more flexibility to provide coverage for that event. But by and large, the big time period in this community is July, August. It starts to subside in September. There's a spike in October. In September. But in October, usually that traffic's gone away. But we were trying to minimize the amount of time here. But if this is something that council would allow us some flexibility on, it's certainly something, again, that I would be happy to address with our team.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I think I would like to defer even to the Ward 8 councillors. It was just something I noted, and we had just heard this morning, and having gone to that event pretty much every year, it's pretty big event. So, okay. But it looks like my colleagues want to chime in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. Primarily, I wanted to address the reaching out to the community. I don't think we reached out to the community on this one. And, just going to 2 people, no wonder you only got 1 response, but that sort of was a concern for me. I am not concerned at all about Cranberry Festival and people having access to their phones and all of those during that time. I recognize that it's temporary. I recognize that your other location is across the street. Sorry, on 169. I want to make sure, though, that this is not going to continue any longer, because I don't believe we really have engaged the community. And there are other concerns in this area that I would just suggest. There are recreational users for things that I just don't want there to be any issues with some of those things. And I'm really talking about, there's oddly enough, there's folks with flying things. I'll just say that. But mostly I just believe that if it is temporary, that's fine. I don't see any reason to extend it. And in fact, I'm just concerned that more and more towers are popping up, and that they're going to remain and obscure our sight lines of our beautiful countryside.
Well, thank you. Sorry, may I respond to
that? Certainly.
Yeah, with respect to the note that was sent to neighboring landowners, it was to 10 people, so not 2, it was to 10 people. And again, we set out certainly the pictures, the photos that you saw today, assured people that this is a temporary measure, and invited them, if there were any questions or comments, to let me know, so that I could address them. It's always a challenge when building a wireless network. Ultimately, people want better service, they want better coverage, and ultimately more capacity means that the service levels are able to be maintained in a community. And we get it. At the same time, it's always difficult to bring forward a new proposal for a tower, but most certainly more telecommunications structures are going to be required in the community, and certainly we'll do our best in order to minimize the impact and work with your community and council, for that matter, in order to ensure that the impact is minimized on your constituents.
Okay, thank you. Before I actually go to Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Zavitz, I actually want to turn to Director Pink, and welcome to our meeting today, David. But maybe you can advise us a little bit about, we've offered support for telecommunications in the past or not. What we have to do, I mean, we don't have a resolution in front of us. This is council today. You are considering installing this tower as of June 25th. David, maybe you can help us just understand, are we just voicing our concerns? Can we flat out say no? What's going on? David?
Hello, Council, through your worship. Council is likely fairly familiar with the process now for permanent telecommunication towers. The Township Council has a policy where their notification requirements are outlined and public input is sought, and ultimately the federal agency who has the authority to approve of those towers requires a formal package to be submitted by the proponents, which includes a concurrence letter from the area municipality. And that's the resolution that's typically before council and committee. This is a unique situation that I personally haven't been involved with prior to, which is a temporary tower. I did speak to the proponent prior to, and I would look to them as to what type of approvals they require from the municipality. Based on our discussions, I got the impression that no approval is required per se, but they should notify the municipality. So I suggested that they come delegate to council and outline the proposal, and you could provide your feedback and thoughts. But I would look somewhat to the proponent as to whether a resolution or correspondence of anything is required from the municipality to proceed, as similar to a permanent telecommunication tower.
Okay, thank you for that. Matthew, maybe you want to comment just on what you need from us. Again, we don't have a resolution in front of us today to consider, or just you're more giving us the heads up as to what's going on, and our comments. Back to you.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are here today to inform you as to what we are proposing, and maybe just give you a little bit of a background on temporary cell sites. Temporary cell sites are permitted by ISED to deal with special events for emergencies. If there was a special event in town, and maybe the Cranberry Festival is a good example, we could put one on site, up it goes for the event, take it down, and that would be of no concern or issues as far as ISED's rules are. Likewise, for an emergency, if there was a flood, forest fire, train derailment, somewhere for whatever reason, additional wireless capacity or coverage is required, roll this in with no issue or concern, at least as far as the regulator is concerned. This particular usage is, I guess we could argue, I suppose, that it is part and parcel with the emergency that's going on. People's wireless habits have totally changed. People are no longer using cell sites at Canada's Wonderland. They're using them at their home and cottage and residential communities across the board. This is unprecedented as far as putting a temporary cell site on a facility such as this for a capacity issue. So we definitely want to get your support on this. First of all, we want to tell you all about it, address any concerns that you might have, but we are looking for your support on this, and ideally through a resolution indicating that you concur or have no issues with what has been proposed before you today.
Okay, it might be a little bit difficult to put a resolution on the table today. I'll do that.
Yep.
So earliest would be from a July perspective, but I'll go to Councillor Hayes for comment, and then Councillor Zavitz. We round out Ward A.
All right. I appreciate that you're looking at servicing what you think will be a temporary spike. What if that spike is not temporary and you've sold internet to all these people that are in the Bala area, and you go to pick up your temporary tower and it's still at capacity? Do you have some kind of a plan to, are there any other towers other than the Glen Orchard one coming online to service these people? Like, do you have a plan just in case it's really not temporary, it's the way things are going now?
Well, we feel that the Glen Orchard site will provide sufficient capacity relief for 2022. But longer term, I mean, there's a significant distance between the two cell sites that service Bala now. I mean, longer term, there is the potential that a cell site would be required in the Bala area in order to provide service just for the town. If you look at, for example, Port Carling has much greater site density. There are 5 cell sites that service Port Carling in some particular way. And there's some terrain challenges with Port Carling, and that's really a subject of topography. But for Bala, there's only 2 sites, one to the north of town or one to the south of town, and none of them are even close to town. So that is, but with that said though, we believe that the Glen Orchard cell site will provide relief for 2022, but we are evaluating our needs for the path forward, like we do for many communities on an ongoing basis as wireless users change their habits and the amount of data that they use and the number of users within their household.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Good, thank you, and through you. So I'm a Bell customer, and in the South Bala, utilizing that tower. So Matthew, if I could, two questions. First one, is it the 5G promise that your service people are floating around out there, or is it a tower update which created your end date of October? That date, because I mean, when you guys come and service me, of which we've had a number of people out here, they are promising 5G in the fall. And so is that what are we to think that the 5G capability will create a bigger, stronger network as of October? Or because I don't understand the limited time. Of course, everybody would want more service. I will totally support this. Of course, we're getting some new businesses in Bala, and that'll put more strain on the system. So yeah, I'd be in total support of it. But is this 5G? Are you going to come to us with a third tower? Are you going to enhance the towers that are there? Thank you.
So for 5G, and Bell is deploying 5G across many parts of its network, including in the Muskoka area. And generally, what we do is the process we call refarming, where we would take LTE frequencies and dedicate them to 5G. So the ask today would have nothing to do with that process. This is completely dependent upon, it's really the seasonal fluctuation that happens in most cottage communities. But in the case of Bala, it's particularly prominent on our performance metrics. And as a result of that, we're looking to offload that temporarily. We know based on previous experience, despite the fact there's a pandemic going on, we are confident that based on previous experiences that there will be a reduction in the amount of data usage come October there. And council's brought to my attention there is an event, a significant event, and that potentially we should factor in. But we don't anticipate there will be many people that are still not coming to the cottage in October, November, December, despite whatever is going on in the world at that time with respect to the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, just for council, there's been a couple of questions here. This tower is going up as a cell, or again, for your internet product specifically. I can surf on my phone using an LTE and data, but I'm not on a turbo hub or whatever the particular. And as I'm listening to you, I'm getting that this is a temporary turbo hub type of a data connection, more so than a traditional cell connection. 5G is a different product, if I'm not mistaken, that goes on telephone poles and has to be in relatively close proximity. If this is truly what I'll call a turbo hub, not really needed for Cranberry Festival, because an influx of people in and around are not going to be using turbo hubs. They'll be using their regular bandwidth on their cell phone.
So 5G is installed on all, or will, like longer term, will be installed on all of our cell sites, not just micro cell sites that you referred to that are on some telephone poles. It would be ubiquitous across the entire network. But the temporary cell site itself would only be for LTE for the most part for wireless devices. But what that means is that we would put a script in our radio network that says if you're in proximity to the temporary cell site and you're also in proximity to the cell site that services Bala or the cell site near Torrens, but as long as you can reach that temporary cell site, that phone is going to reach the temporary cell site. And as a result of that, there's more bandwidth on our permanent towers available for wireless internet purposes. So behind the scenes, there is an engineering discipline at Bell. It's all about managing wireless traffic, and this would be one of the ways that we can do that. And it's writing a script. It tells the network what to do, what the network should do when it receives a signal from a phone. And usually, for the most part, it's the strongest signal, closest tower. But in this instance, if the signal was acceptable, you would use the temporary cell site, despite the fact that you might be closer to one of the permanent towers.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting general support, I think, from council in this particular case. Council, we have a couple of options. I mean, we can legalize this today by passing a bylaw or a motion that we support this, but that would theoretically be a notice without motion. Our public may or may not be able to do there. We also understand from our director that theoretically they can put the tower up tomorrow if they wanted to, as it's a temporary use tower. They could talk about COVID as an emergency situation to do so. I'm wondering from a process perspective, and to I think let the public chime in a little bit, if we were to defer any kind of a resolution or support of this until next month, we could come back to council. You could theoretically be putting this up, but we could sort of legalize it and get more public comment before this council fully endorses by way of resolution this. You have verbal discussion today. You've certainly advised us what's going on. I'm not getting any red flags, but I think it might be not a bad idea to get a little more public information. We can chat about it. I'm sure that if this tower goes up on the 25th, we will have some comments from the public as to what is this doing here. And we can have, again, a little bit more fulsome discussion just to confirm our support or withdraw of support potentially by mid-July versus agreeing to something to be up for the next 5 months. Council, does that seem like a way forward for us all here? Are we comfortable with that? Or would you rather pass a motion with notice, without notice today? Councillor Zavitz, I see you as a Ward 8 councillor. What would you prefer to do? Maybe now you could unmute, considering you just muted yourself.
Right.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, to the point, I clearly this is here for a reason. It's necessary. And I did mean when I say there are a number of new businesses coming to Bala that will require a more solid network. And right now that network at Bell is fragile. I'm on it, and I can tell you it is. And I'm over here in Torrance. So I think that if we wait till, we hear this many times, but if we wait till July, and I don't know why we wouldn't support it. Quite honestly, it's going to, this isn't just for Bell to make more money. This is for our constituents to communicate, because right now they're having trouble communicating. So I personally thank Matthew for coming forward, and I don't know why we would wait, but it is what it is.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Zavitz, the point being, Matthew's going to put this tower up on the 25th, regardless of whether or not we pass a resolution today here in council. If for some reason in the next 30 days, we get a number of constituents saying you did the wrong thing, we might like to hear that, because I'll tell you, I haven't heard anything from anybody. Councillor Nishikawa said maybe 2 people were aware of this in downtown Bala. So it might be appropriate for us. We're not going to stop process. We're not going to stop progress. You have our verbal consent today, and that will be followed up in 30 days with a written consent or maybe a revision as to what's going on, that we do need this in for a longer period of time or not, but acting under your own authority at this point, and then would get our support in writing theoretically 30 days from now. Anybody disagree with that strongly at this particular point? Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. Because of the short timeline, I don't see holding this up at this time or requesting further. I think it's already, like we're talking even that many less time frame. I am concerned that others have not had the opportunity, don't even have a clue that this is going on. And I get that they might not be a neighbor, but Bala's a pretty tight community. Generally, and so I don't like to leave people out. I'll just say that. I don't want staff to have to do any more work on this. I want this to be removed in October. I was happy with the original date. And I'm just going to say that it's so difficult to keep coming back these topics in these days. And so I would just suggest that we can move forward and whatever our blessing looks like, but have it removed in October.
Okay, so Councillor Nishikawa, nobody's asking staff to do anything additional. Staff have yet to prepare any resolution. They would have to prepare a resolution for us to pass in support. So we could do that now without notice, without motion. Staff can take a break and work through the break and craft a resolution of support, or we can allow staff a 30-day time to craft an appropriate resolution, put it on an agenda, give public notice that we are doing that, but that will not stop Bell from erecting the tower next week as their original proposal. We have no jurisdiction to stop it at this particular point, but we might get some more public feedback, as I've heard that the public are really unaware of this and it's a small community. So we can go ahead and move forward and give him blanket authority in the next hour or so when staff have an opportunity to make some changes. But if we do that, we don't really have any opportunity to really listen to any public concerns or make any little tweaks that he might have to potentially change at our request 30 days from now, because we're going to give him unfettered access through now through the end of October and have it removed. The removal, again, we can frame this a little bit better in 30 days. Anybody else want to chime in? I'm not getting a lot of, Councillor Roberts, I see your hand up. And I personally would recommend that we pause this 30 days before we give the blanket approval, but then they can move forward. Councillor Roberts and Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I say we should pause it for 30 days, but I want to ask Matthew a question. Matthew, with our acknowledgement that we think what we believe we've sort of said, go ahead and put it up on the 25th without saying it. Is that what your management will accept? Can you still, do we put any roadblocks up for you not to get it in on the 25th?
Matthew?
Well, I mean, my concern would be that if we move forward on the 25th and start adding wireless internet subscribers as we've stated that the ultimate goal of this tower is, to hear from you something different 30 days from now would be a concern. And I mean, if the tower had to come down certainly in July or August, that would potentially be cause a large problem on the wireless network. Most certainly in July or August, it would. I mean, maybe I'd ask council just to reflect on the fact that, I mean, it's not a very ominous structure by any means compared to a typical cell site. It is a lattice type structure, but it's very, very small. You saw the rendering. I mean, you certainly see it when you drive by, but the impact is relatively minimal. Of course, with an end date in sight, the end date being October. So certainly our preference would be resolution by council to take care of this today, as opposed to wait 30 days because of the uncertainty involved and the potential risk to wireless users, all wireless users in Bala, to have poor service in the event there was a change to this plan that we're putting forward here.
Okay, council, I see a few hands up. I'm just going to ask, and I'll change this again. I appreciate what Matthew's saying. I'm going to suggest that I'm going to get that our Ward A councillors would like to pass this today and not make changes. I'm seeing that from a few people. So unless, again, I'm going to change this, we're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to have our clerk's department craft a resolution that provides our support at one point later on this afternoon with 2/3 majority. Okay, so I'm going to, council, thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at a little about 12 minutes after the hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I do need Councillor Zavitz and Nishikawa. And people to come back. Okay, welcome back. I think we have the appropriate number of people. First resolution is moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa, whereas Section 3516 of Township Council Procedural Bylaw 2019-79 provides that any motion may be introduced without notice of council, without debate, dispense with notice by a 2/3 vote. Now therefore be resolved that Township Council hereby consents to the consideration of a vote on a new motion with respect to the Bell Mobility temporary cell site without notice. I'll ask a question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, you have 2/3. Thank you very much. And then with the next resolution is moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that Township Council has no objection to the request from Bell Mobility to locate a temporary cell site at the Bala Central Switching Office located at Burgess Street, Bala, from June 25th to October 21st, which is a week after the original October 14th. This would allow for Cranberry Festival 2021, as presented to Township Council on June 16th, 2021. Any further comments? Not seeing any, and in the absence of any public comment on this, we will call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have support or no objection from this council. I will say, as someone, being in the business and dealing with real estate, in the future, 9 days notice from a council meeting or the first time you introduce is probably not appropriate. We typically like things to come through a committee, which would then come to council 30 days later, that we can allow for the appropriate public vetting. And just to advise you of that coming back, hopefully we can follow that. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Your comments are taken, and do appreciate council support today. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn over to Director Becking. I think we have a couple contract to award. First one is supply and install plate for frame evaporator, whatever that is. Ken, what are we buying?
Thank you, Your Worship. To answer your question, basically, it's one of the vital components of the refrigeration system that allows us to run our arena. We have a chiller unit which is has reached the end of its useful life. It cannot no longer be certified. Staff went to issue tenders to replace it, and the staff recommendation is to award to the lowest compliant bidder. Bear with me.
There we go. Any comments from council? Resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that contract T 2021-21 for the replacement of the plate and frame evaporator at Bala Sports Centre be awarded to Simcoe Refrigeration for the bid price of $80,900, excluding HST, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the project. Any further comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Bala Falls Bridge. I know also we have a consultant with us today to discuss this, so maybe we'll let them into the room. And Director Becking, do you want to start us off? How do we want to play this one out?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will recall that staff brought forward a report to your main meeting, which gave you an overview of the class environmental assessment process that had been undertaken to date, and brought forward to you a recommended preferred alternative, which was to replace the structure. Council wished further detail as to what that entailed and what was being proposed, and directed staff to prepare some conceptual designs for your further consideration, with a view to ensuring that some of the more significant features of the current site be incorporated into the new works. Staff have carried out that direction, and Emma Wilkinson from Tatham Consultants is in attendance today to provide you with the results of that work, and to seek your support for taking those conceptual alternatives to the public for further review and comment. So with that, welcome, Emma, and I'd ask you to give the council an overview of the two conceptual alternatives that you've developed.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Emma. And now, do you have a presentation you're sharing with us, or are you going to refer us to the pictures in our agenda package?
It's the same photos in your agenda package. I can either share, or if you want to pull them up.
We'll put them up. That's fine. And we'll go again, if we can, just a quick brief overview. I know our council has read the package and probably already wants to chime in. So they want to speak, I'm sure, as much as we can. But I'll leave it to you right now.
Okay. So this first shot is just for comparison. This is the existing Bala structure as viewed from the south elevation, or the west elevation, sorry. You want to go to the next slide. So this is our first concept here. And with this one, we tried to maintain the most similar look to the existing structure, keeping the superstructure relatively shallow and reusing all 4 of the existing stone piers. You can see the shallow steel girders there with a concrete deck and a timber railing to reflect the existing timber railing, but bring it up to current standards. You want to go to the next slide. And here's the same first concept as well, with the thin superstructure and the shallow steel girders. But we've added some additional optional enhancements here. You can see the one area in the center of the middle span there has a lookout that's built out so that pedestrians can stand and look out from the bridge without interrupting flow of other pedestrians walking on the sidewalk. They've also got some aesthetic enhancements to the railing here. We've added some vertical pickets and some stone columns, really to tie in with the existing stone abutments and piers, as well as the retaining wall that's on that southeast corner on the approach. You want to go to the next slide. And this is the second concept in general. So here we've utilized 2 of the 4 piers. So the 2 outer piers are in the best condition right now. The 2 in middle piers take the brunt of the erosive action of the water course. And as such, they're in the worst shape. They need the most rehabilitation, and they'll require the most maintenance going forward. So this concept overspans those 2 and would involve some removal of the upper portion of the stone portions of those piers so that you could get a deeper girder in there, which is shown here. Again, this concept A, 2A, shows the basic timber railing with some wire mesh. And then if you go to the next slide, we show that alternate with the bump out for the lookout and the stone enhancements on the columns and the vertical pickets with the railing. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So this is a view from the roadway of the existing structure for comparison. And then if you go to the next slide, this shows our concept 1A or 1B without the lookout and has the basic railing. You can see here, in order to get the timber pedestrian railing on the outside to get that aesthetic look that we were going for, we had to put a vehicle barrier inside between the roadway and the sidewalk. We went with an open barrier just to kind of keep the look rather than going with a solid concrete. If you want to go to the next slide, this is the same view, but with the alternate railing and the lookout. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this is the view from the bridge looking west under existing conditions. And then if you want to go to the next slide, this is what it would look like without a lookout and the basic horizontal timber rails. As you can see here, the horizontal timber rails are up to standard with the bridge code. However, the building code has a climbability restriction. So we've added some steel wire mesh here so that it'll be on the inside face so that you can't climb up on those rails for safety. And if you want to go to the next slide, this just gives you an idea of that lookout and a close-up view of the concept for the stone piers and the vertical pickets. And if you want to go to the next slide, this is the existing view looking back south towards town. And if you want to go to the next slide, that's a view of the basic horizontal railing as well as the vehicle barrier. And the next slide should show the lookout from that viewpoint as well. And then I think the next, oh, okay, so that's the end of the visualizations. The only other thing we did was compare steel to concrete in terms of using the girders. The existing is steel girders right now. If we went with a concrete girder, it significantly increases the depth of the superstructure and the cost. But that's a basic rundown. If you have any questions or if Ken wants to continue with the discussion on the costs.
Okay, I'll turn it over. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Director Becking, maybe you can help us. I can tell you my confusion a little bit is option 1, 3-span, 5-span, 2-span, and how it relates to the pictures, which has which price associated on it. I'm not sure if anybody else has got that same question. It might help our discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Really good question, and I understand that it is perhaps not terribly clear. The alternatives that we're trying to utilize the existing foundations, and the alternatives revolve around: are we using the 2 abutments and all of the piers in between, or are we using the 2 abutments and only 2 of the piers? Obviously, by having only 2 piers, that means we've got a larger span. It means that we have to rehabilitate fewer of the piers, of the existing piers. But there is a trade-off with that choice in terms of the depth of the bridge superstructure, and therefore you're trading off foundation cost for superstructure cost. If you refer to the table in the report, option 1 assumes utilizing all of the existing supports, so the 2 abutments and the 4 piers. And we've given you 2 alternatives: one for a concrete alternative and one for a steel alternative. Option 2 is a 3-span alternative, so it's utilizing the 2 existing abutments and 2 of the piers, the 2 outer of the 4 piers. And again, we've repeated the 2 options of a concrete alternative and a steel alternative. The summary, cutting to the chase, as it were, is that the steel alternative is going to be the cheaper of the two material types. And based on what we know today, utilizing all of the six supports, 5 spans, will likely result in the lowest cost option, all things considered. Now, keep in mind that all of these alternatives are based on a single lane roadway in one direction, which was the stated preference from the last meeting. This is not a two-way, two-lane bridge. So Bala Falls Road would be two-way road from District Road 169 up to Walker Street. From that point to the far side of the CPR subway would be a one-way. Now, there are some complications. First of all, we have Divers Point, which is the access for the maintenance of the dam, and it does need to be accessible by heavy vehicles. So under those conditions, the bridge would have to operate manually in a two-way condition so that the contractors can get in and out. The other condition is during the winters when the snowmobile club utilize that area. And again, it would have to operate in a two-way fashion for the snowmobiles. Other than that, a one-lane bridge would function adequately in that location, subject to the change in the flow of the traffic.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Zavitz, and then maybe we have some more questions, and then Councillor Nishikawa.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you, and through you, Chair. So I guess to Tatham Engineering. So here's what I know. We're okay. I think people are okay. The people that I've talked to on the street, on the main street, I've spoken to many, and I've got many emails. People are loving 1B. That's what I'm told, with the promontory piece out. So I mean, that's what they like. What's interesting is that to be more inclusive, that bottom piece can, to your description earlier, though, was that the sidewalk, sorry, the concrete rehab is what people are perceiving to be the best historical sort of look to what the bridge currently is. So does that make some sense when I say that to you? Sidewalk on both sides, one way is great. Everything you've said about traffic management is great. They would like the butt out into the south channel. But everybody is questioning the sidewalk steel barrier at the road. You know, why this infrastructure or superstructure, if you will, when, you know, it isn't there now. Certainly there's a sidewalk and then a road, and I can walk across 169 at the hydro plant bridge at the North Falls, and there's no road protection for me as a pedestrian. So can you speak to that, or can someone speak
Certainly.
to it? Yeah, please. People are listening.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Your Worship. All bridges have to be designed and built to the standards that are in place at the time that the design takes place. I can't comment on whether or not the bridges down on 169 meet current code, but in any event, Council, the direction from Council at your last meeting was that there was a desire for a more sympathetic pedestrian railing that is consistent with the general look and feel of the existing railing. Unfortunately, that railing is not adequate to meet the code currently in force. So that leaves staff in a position of having to make one of two choices. Either we put a code compliant vehicular crash barrier at the edge of the bridge and therefore don't comply with Council's direction, about wanting to have this more sympathetic and aesthetically pleasing pedestrian railing. Or in the alternative, have the aesthetically pleasing pedestrian railing at the edge of the bridge, but put a code compliant crash barrier between the pedestrian space and the roadway. If council wants a single barrier, then obviously we would comply and we will put that out at the edge of the bridge, but recognize that it will not be as aesthetically pleasing, shall we say, as would otherwise be the case.
Councillor Savage, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Follow-up supplementary. Yeah, so having pulled business along the street, Bala Falls Road, you know, initially there was a lot of concern about the one-way piece. I think as we get into it and discuss it further, they all agreed. I mean, it's two-way where it needs to service the businesses that are on Bala Falls Road. So, you know, with trucks coming in and out for food service aspects and other supplies, one supposes. But when one gets past Walker Street, there's a church. It's an easy, you know, egress piece down and out and through because of the restrictions around that the train bridge, if you will, that how low and everything else, and it's limited. You can't take a commercial vehicle through there anywhere. The only thing we did discuss, and Director Becky, you'll recall, when one approaches from, say, Don's Bakery towards on 169, one can no longer turn left at Bala Falls Road to seek access to Perks Place, and that is a concern. So I would ask certainly for some special signage that perhaps indicates for local business. Well, and again, that's a tricky one, but I don't want to have, you know, people have to go all the way around what we might be calling the loop to get people familiar with that whole aspect. I'm just wondering, is there a way to somehow allow access to Perks Place so we don't choke them out even further from the troubles they've had over the years with the hydro plant, et cetera, et cetera. So I would put that in there under advisement, if you will. Thank you.
Well, I think it's a question, Director Becking, how we're going to deal with what I'll call north of the bridge.
And thank you for that. And perhaps I haven't been clear, Your Worship, and for that I apologize. The intent is to keep the area between 169 and the CPR subway. So from the north approach will still be a two-way roadway. It'll only be, traffic will be prohibited from going under the subway. So the access to Perks Place and to the Presbyterian Church will not be adversely affected by this proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Zavich, you asked the other question about the bridge, and before I get to Councillor Nishikawa, I just want to make sure you're comfortable that we are going to have two theoretical steel guardrails on either side of the road and then a more pedestrian-friendly barrier on the outside, or are you rethinking a vehicular barrier on the outside of the pedestrian walkway to eliminate the double barrier?
Sorry, thank you. Well, I would want the most aesthetically pleasing, least engineered look, the most casual. This is what I'm hearing from people, but I mean, within the code, one must adhere to the specifications that one must. So, you know, as pretty as we would want it, I mean, what the pictures that I see, it looks very, very cold. How can we pretty that up and make that more warm and inviting and not look almost scary, antiseptic, if you will. So, I don't know, is that a design piece? Does that add cost? If it does, we need to look at it perhaps. Thank you for that.
So to follow up on that, Director Becking, what I'm hearing is there an alternative guardrail that could be a pedestrian friendly guardrail, somewhat like the existing bridge on 169 or many of the other new bridges, that would be more aesthetically pleasing without having to install the vehicle barrier prior to the sidewalk?
I think I don't know that I can directly answer the question, Your Worship, but what I would suggest is we will certainly endeavor to search out alternatives that may be a little bit more pleasing to people. And if, ultimately the design will come back to council before a final go-ahead is given. And we'll show you the range of alternatives and you can pick and choose as you see fit.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I would like a little bit of a leeway. The first thing when I look at this and discuss this is the disappointment that I had heard from people when district repaired the bridge on 169. Any historic components were completely removed. And in fact, it got really industrialized and cheapened in some people's view. So I look at this, I'm looking at particularly 1B, 2B, like I can't see what page that is, but anyhow, my first instinct is that we don't need to pay for another lookout. This is not a desirable lookout anymore. Water doesn't flow through this area. Very little water flows anymore. So that's what we have today. So, I mean, we're going to have this great new park. We already have a lookout down the river. I don't see that this is a necessary expense to have the bump out. I would suggest though that I'd like to see the railing, yes, meet building code for sure, but even raised a little more. And I say that for other activities that happen in that area. For instance, how easy it is to heave a picnic table over top, which has happened a lot of times, I will just tell you that, and then some. So, but I don't like, I love the idea of the one-way traffic. I'm a little concerned we haven't talked about what's happening on the other side. And again, that goes back to this whole zone is actually been designated by our council as historic significance. And so I'm a little concerned about what is going to happen on the Lake Muskoka side. People love the boardwalk type walkway. And of course, it has that similar railing that we're now wanting to push. But I don't believe that we need this additional structure per se to handle the pedestrians, and that's what we're discussing. It's completely taken away these looks. While they're lovely, it doesn't resemble what this area has been about, in my opinion. So I can't even tell, what the costs are. Some of the to pull out different costs and things. I don't want to get into those specifics, but I would suggest that if you were actually to pull a larger number, and I've, for instance, I had heard from a couple of business on the other side of town. We don't need new parks. We don't need new things in town. That's not why we're asking people to come. We want them to shop in the stores. So can we find a different way to spend whatever money that bump out is, improve our docks, for instance, some of those things. That's where I think we need to focus some of our monies and the discussion. That's my point right now.
Okay, we'll take those comments. Councillor Hayes.
Sorry, I was just comparing pictures. If you look at 1A and you look at the original, if you were to add one more tier to the top, because you can see in the original picture, the board on top actually goes over the girder coming towards it. You would get something very similar to what we have there right now. No bump out. Unfortunately, we would have to have the inside rail system for the cars. But looking at it, it looks very similar to what we're taking down. So I would support either of the A's. I would like to think that we would have the whatever's going to get us the longest amount of time before we have to look at refurbishing this again. So if that means that we do the longer steel girders, that makes more sense to me than doing the shorter ones and hoping that the pilots stay up.
Okay, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to raise another subject that was in the report about the pedestrian-only bridge, but no one else is raising it, so I'll skip by that. But what I will raise, can people visualize the Port Sandfield Bridge? It's a one-lane bridge, has a walkway on one side, a raised sidewalk on one side, guardrails on the outside. Doesn't have this double set of rails. That bridge was built not too long ago, I don't think. So I'm just wondering whether all of that is necessary. The other thing is at the Port Sandfields Bridge, there's only a walkway on one side. If this isn't a scenic lookout area, then why do we have a walkway on both sides? So I'm just wondering if it's gotten a little too complicated. And if anybody's interested in talking about the pedestrian bridge only, I think if the MNRF need access to something, I'm not so sure why that's our problem. But anyway, so my goal in this would be to replace it at the lowest cost possible, keeping the original look as much as possible. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And that looking at that, the ministry had to get into service the dam, and I think they should be putting some money towards this. It's always been a one-lane, two-way bridge, and I don't see why that can't still be looked at. It's $150,000 for stoplights on that, which would then let them legally go in, service their dam, and come back out. And they should be picking up that, or they can't get to service the dam. And I think we should be talking to them and seeing what they can do. If we close that dam tomorrow, the bridge tomorrow, they couldn't get to their dam. So they should be putting something towards it. And I think we should be talking to them. As far as what the council was like, I would go with the single lane in that bridge with the steel, option one, at $1,975. Sorry, $1,975,000, and put the lights in there. It makes more sense to me. In that, it's coming up to present day standards, so you need the guardrails. If you want just a one way and that pedestrian, that's fine. And that it's up to what Ward A want, but I would definitely be talking to the ministry on that, because they should be putting some money in. If we make it just one way, then they can't get back across the bridge. And that, or we could sit there and find them every time they go in, and we can make up and that for the lights. But they should be putting something in towards it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Savitz, I see your hand up. I just want to try and frame where we're at right now. And one of the things, and Councillor Evers made the comment that, we'll sort of follow what Ward A wants. Councillor Zavitz, I heard liked concept 1B. Councillor Nishikawa doesn't want to bump out. Councillor Hayes suggested the less expensive steel girder with maybe the work. So I'm even seeing some discrepancies on picking an option that we have presented to us today. And we talk about, should there be a sidewalk on one side? Should there not be? Do we like the steel girders? Do we want to look at a different look of a railing? I know we're still trying to maintain the history, but when we can't put a wood railing on the side to keep the cars in, maybe we do need to look at a different type of substructure that people can look out to open up the bridge and make it more aesthetically pleasing. There's going to be some pros and cons. I do not believe that we are going to be able to land this airplane today, that we're going to be able to come to consensus. If we might even get 5-5 split vote as to which way to go forward. What I would suggest is that maybe we take a number of different design elements and see what we can do. And I think the one thing that I appreciate that I see today are some of the visuals that show the bump out, but I think we need to put some costing to those and what we like and what we don't like. And we need to show these and use that Engage Muskoka survey platform to try and get a better understanding. To Councillor Edwards' perspective of a one-way bridge, MNRF has stated, and I know our Director Becking has stated, that they can literally stop traffic to get the vehicles off the bridge and just use individual person control when they need to back out of there if they can't get underneath. So that is an option, but traffic signals are another option. I see Councillor Zavitz and Hayes, or hands are still up. Director Becking, I'm going to kind of come to you a little bit quickly here to see if you, and through this discussion, again, I'm hearing and seeing more of a circular motion, that we don't really have any concrete plans, no pun intended, or any seal plans in this particular case. And maybe you can help provide your thoughts as to how we may try and help council to engage the public as to where we may want to go forward. Ken, we'll need you to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I recognize that perhaps there is not complete consensus about what the path forward looks like. That having been said, there's been a lot of good commentary and statements of like and dislike and some suggestions about how things might be improved. I think in order for council to make its sort of the best informed decision possible, it is included within the recommendation that we go back to the public with the alternatives, with your blessing, of course, to solicit further feedback, with the intent to come forward to you in August meeting to provide you with the results of that input, and hopefully that will help to narrow the scope of the discussion down to a finalized alternative. So that was the intent. I guess my general sense is that there's not a great deal of interest in the lookout, but certainly we can put a definitive cost to that. So then you can weigh, do we want it in or out? That's easily done. I think staff's hands are somewhat tied in that we do have an obligation to adhere to code, and a pedestrian railing simply does not meet the requirements of the code. So that still leaves open, however, the opportunity to look at some kind of a more kinder vehicular barrier, and we can certainly explore that as an option and come back to you if you wish. So those are the messages that I'm hearing.
Right, and again, I think there's, if I may, there's certain different options that we really need to visualize. If we were, as I say, to potentially, it's nice to say we want the pedestrian railing, but if that's at a cost, because there has to be a vehicular railing on the inside, what kind of an aesthetically pleasing vehicular railing could be put on the outside that we can evaluate a yes or a no? And I think those visual images are the only thing that's going to really help this council and the public decide. We went in, I think it was a couple months ago, Councillor Zavitz made the comment, he'll never get reelected unless we have this exact bridge. But we realized today that we can't rehab the exact bridge. So we need to make some changes, and I respect that, but I think the visuals are going to help us going forward. I'm going to ask just one more time, Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Jagwitz, any further comments, but I think right now we're going to send staff back to give us more visualization with some additional costing as we move forward. Glenn, did you have another comment? And then I'll go to Councillor Jagwitz.
I did. Thank you. And thank you for that. I certainly agree completely with both your comments. Thank you for framing that up so well. And certainly Director Becking, I want to say that I would implore us not to vote today, and certainly to carry on this path of discovery here. A comment was made, though, that the South Channel no longer has water. It does have water on every long weekend. As you well know, they open it up. Even right now, when it's closed, the leakage itself, I think I maybe witnessed 25 people on Saturday. People stop and they look. So they do need protection from cars. Whether you do a promontory or not, that's a matter of, is it 250 or is it, 29.6? I mean, it's 29.6, let's do it. It makes sense. It's, we have to promote tourism and promote a walking score through the middle of our town. So I appreciate the comments today, and I know the public that's watching will appreciate that this thing has extra life and energy in it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jagwitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I think if you're going back out to the public, all of these renderings are very similar. They all show the same type of bridge. I'd like to see one that is the lowest cost possible, but serves the needs. In other words, preserves the pillars, makes it look as, walkway on one side, one set of barriers instead of two, just as an option. So the public has an idea, because right now they're all costed the same, basically. And just so they can make their choice. The other thing, Ken, just a quick question. Way back, you were talking about possibly just spanning the area, not using the pillars as support. That didn't work out. Is that the idea?
Director Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. Doing a complete span of the channel was not consistent with Council's direction. I can also tell you that, though, that you will end up with a much deeper and less pleasing elevation. It won't be as aesthetically pleasing, and it will look quite pedestrian, quite frankly.
Okay, so that's
very little in the way of character.
So that's fair. Thank you. I just would like to see one low-cost solution in the bunch if it's possible. Not that it'll get selected. Thank you.
So thank you. I think there's already a 10% or more discrepancy from high to low in the budget. So, and I think we'll find even a greater one as we look forward when we add pedestrian and or vehicular barriers going forward. So I'm not going to read the resolution that's in front of us today, but I think a direction to staff is to go back, listen to the comments today, to provide some visual representation with some different options for us, and to put some specific costing numbers, if you will, on those visualization drawings so that we can understand them a little bit better and under what we're going to buy or not buy as we go forward. And then hopefully in July, you have council blessing to be able to go out to the public to solicit additional public information. Director Becking, you good with that as direction?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Your Worship and Council.
Thank you very much. Okay, Council, we're going to move on, and we need to buy a pumper truck. Fire Chief, I know, is standing by just in case, but I'm just going to suggest, is there any questions on the pumper truck right now, or can I go right ahead and read the resolution? Anybody have any questions? We've all seen the report. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that contract T 2021-27 be awarded to Fort Garry Fire Trucks Limited for the bid price of $394,181, taxes excluded, and that the fire chief be authorized to execute all necessary documents to proceed with the purchase of this fire truck. Any comments? Director Becking has put up a picture of a dump truck, not a fire truck, but all those in favor? Chief Morrell, you've got a new fire truck coming your way. There we go. So there, fire truck's good. Economic grants or grants program. Any comments on this? Mr. Moore is with us. Any questions on this report, Council? Corey, is there anything particular you need to highlight, or I can go right ahead and just approve it? I think we're probably pretty good.
Yeah, we're pretty good.
Moved by Councilor Mazan, seconded by Councilor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that Council approve the Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee's recommendations respecting funding allocations for the first intake of the 2021 Community Grants Program as outlined in Appendix 1 or I of the staff report entitled 2021 Municipal Grants Program and data June 16, 2021 be approved. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we're carried. Thank you very much. Corey, great job. Temporary exemption, I'm just going to go ahead and read this. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that notice of decision dated, am I right? No, that's wrong one. Temporary, we're out of order here. I skipped. I've got temporary patio exemption. Right. Moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-94 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 temporary patio exemption program be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. This is similar to last year. Any comments on this particular? Council, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Sounds good. Parking restrictions on Judd Haven Road. We're going to respond back. I got to pull a couple things here. Hang on. Just we'll move that one out of the way briefly. Okay, parking on Judd Haven. This is regarding the Lang Mirsky application. Excuse me. And where is that one? Hold on. Oh, that's there. I've got a couple things here. Established fire rates of pay. I'm just going to read this whole application here. I think everyone's pretty well versed with the parking restrictions on Judd Haven regarding the Lang Mirsky application. There's also a second that talks about our honorarium rates of pay, but that's moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. I do not see Councillor. Oh, you see it. Sorry, there he is. He's in his field. He's in the poppies field. Be it resolved the following bylaws be read at first, second, and third time and finally passed. And that's bylaw 2021-71 to amend Schedule A, the honorarium rates of bylaw 2016-125 to establish rates regulated a fire department, and bylaw 2021-88 to authorize parking restrictions on Judd Haven Road, which is Royal Muskoka Island. Any further comments? All those in favor? That too is carried. So we have compare firefighters and we have no parking on Judd Haven. Okay, Judd Haven's good. Where do we want to go, Madam Clerk? Lease agreement? And road closing. So J, and then a road closing. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time finally passed. Bylaw 2021-60 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix a corporate seal to a license agreement. Watmore, Rule 2-1154. And bylaw 2021-65 to stop up, close, and convey a portion of original shore road allowance line between lot 30 and 31 concession G Medora, and that's under the name of Richards. Rule 4, 21, 28, and 40. Any comments? All those in favor? Those two are carried. Okay, I'm just going to keep working my way through some bylaws here. Our dog licensing bylaw and our committee members. Rob, welcome. And any questions on the dog license bylaw or amendments in the committee suggested, Council? I think we're good, Rob. We've got a good report. Welcome to your first official report. I guess is this your first report? I think coming to council. So, and a welcome addition you are, by the way. Moved by Councillor Everett, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw 2021-89 to appoint members to the Dog Control Appeal Committee for the Township of Muskoka Lakes and to set appropriate remuneration. And Bylaw 2021-90 to control and license dogs. All those in favor? Everybody there? No, carried. Thank you. Okay, dog license is good. Dog control is good. I think we're moving on to Lang and Mirsky. Am I correct? Consent applications. And I know we have Mr. Farner here with us. Maybe we'll let into the thing, Stephen, and then Mr. Sharp. Maybe a quick report. I know that we have made also a little amendment to that. So, Bryce.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council. I'll try to keep this brief as I believe my report speaks for itself. Council will recall that the subject consent applications were approved in May, subject to conditions of consent. Council ratified Planning Committee's recommendation before it could be amended with revised conditions of consent as requested by delegations later on in the meeting. Staff are now bringing forward the amended conditions of consent for Council's consideration as was originally intended. Just briefly, staff have amended condition number 3, which requires a consent agreement in order to restrict future lot creation on the retained lot and severed lot number 2, and to strengthen the access relationship between the new lots and the waterfront landing or other sufficient means of access. Staff have also amended condition number 4 to waive a requirement for cash in lieu of parkland for severed lot 1, recognizing that the intent is to donate this lot to the Muskoka Conservancy. I'd be happy to answer any questions from council. Thank you.
Okay, council, I think we're good. Mr. Fauner, did you want to speak on this behalf? Welcome.
There we go. As soon as I can unmute myself, thank you. Again, thanks for the opportunity to speak to Council, Steve Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited. I just wanted to thank staff for their positive report. I think they hit on the points exactly as to what we want to look at for the amended decisions. Unfortunately, there was a little hiccup at the last council, but however, we're just going to make our way through that. I just wanted to emphasize of what staff has said right at the end of its report is that these amendments are minor and do not require further circulation. And I just want to make 2 points there. The consent agreement to not permit further lot creation on severed lot 2 and the retained lot are further restrictions on my client. So again, that shouldn't impact the public. And secondly, the cash in lieu of parkland was not objected to by any members of the public. In fact, Mr. Steve Ross was in fact in favor of providing some leniency on the cash in lieu of parkland so that we would get a dedication to the Muskoka Conservancy. So those are really just the points I wanted to make, and I strongly agree that these amended conditions are minor and don't require further circulation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Everts. Be it resolved that notice of decision dated May 12, 2021 for consent application B2321 ML Lang and Mirsky rolls 42686 and 417-1 be amended to 1, replace condition 3 with that a consent agreement be entered into with the township under section 5126 of the Planning Act, wherein the applicants agree not to sever the retained lot or severed lot 2 to implement the recommendations of the environmental impact study prepared by Beacon Environmental and dated January 2021, to not utilize public parking and dock utilities as the principal means of access to the severed and retained lots, and to secure the proposed waterfront landing or other sufficient means for long-term access to the severed and retained lots. This agreement is to be registered on title. And number 2, to amend condition 4 to remove the requirement for cash in lieu of parkland as it relates to severed lot 1. Any further comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we're carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us. That one's carried. We have a couple site plan controls, and that's Lehman and Danny Recreation. Do we need a report on this? Or I think you can just read the bylaw, correct? Bryce, do you want to bring us up to date on this? I think we're probably fine.
I think we're fine, Your Worship. These are just bylaws to implement site plan control in relation to two recent planning applications. One, which is in front of you today, Diane Recreational Corporation, to be ratified. The other one is related to the Lehman application, which you may recall from council as well. So I think we're good to go here. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do I need to read the Danny application before I impose site plan control? Okay, so we're going to pause that reading of that. And then I also want to go to Fangrad, and let's bring that one up first, and then I'll do Danny. Bryce, any comments on Fangrad?
I believe Mr. Soya has a few words to say. Thanks.
Okay, and I believe Ms. Poirier is supposed to be with us as well. So we'll let Marie into the meeting, and then also Sam, I'll turn it over to you regarding Fan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, at the Planning Committee meeting in May, the recommendation to Council to approve the zoning bylaw amendment 0321 in the name of Fangrad was defeated. And yeah, it's my understanding as well that Marie Poirier or representatives from her office are here to delegate to that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's any from council today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to serve council's memory, this is a Fangrad as a property on Curry Street, I believe, and I think council unanimously turned it down, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Mr. Soya?
That is correct. Yeah, it's a property that's zoned waterfront residential in the urban center of Bala with 100 feet of frontage on Lake Muskoka. And in this case, a previously existing legal non-compliant dwelling has been replaced generally in the same location, but with a larger footprint, portions of which encroach further on the front yard setback and side yard setbacks. And there's also a sun deck, which was constructed without the benefit of a building permit. And exemptions for these structures were requested. However, there were several concerns, a primary concern was that portions of this as-built development have been identified to be located within the floodway of Lake Muskoka, or more specifically in Bala Bay. And in accordance with provincial, district, and township policies, development is not permitted in a floodway. We have now, today we did receive a document that I'm sure the Marie Poirier's representatives will be speaking to. It was a engineering report that has added some additional information to this, but at the basically stating that the floor elevation of this dwelling is to be above the flood elevation, but from a planning policy perspective, it would still represent development within a floodway, this dwelling. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We may get you to circle back, and we will welcome who's here today. Marie, there you are. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak to this. As you will recall, we were given a 30-day extension from the first time the Planning Committee heard this application, so that we can consult a professional engineer to determine the actual elevation of this dwelling in relation to the stated 100-year flood elevation that's being used and relied upon for controlling development in the floodway. We received on June 15th and have had since then our engineer stamp the report. So this was a report that was prepared with 2 site visits by a professional engineer, Duke Engineering, to determine that the floor of the structure will be above the 100-year flood elevation. I understand committee turned this down unanimously. However, we had already retained the engineer to get this information, and to be perfectly transparent with council. We wanted to make sure that you knew we had this information, and hoped it would be helpful, and hope that you would defer it back to planning committee so we would have more time to discuss this with staff and let them review the report in more detail. And in all fairness to staff, they've had this since 11 o'clock this morning only. And that's because, I'm sure as you are aware, everybody is extremely busy these days, and it took the engineer 5 or 6 weeks to get this report to us. So my apologies for that. We weren't trying to pull a fast one. We engaged them as soon as we got your direction the first time, but this is how long it's taken to get it. And I think that, council should know that, we do have this information when they're making their decision, and hopefully you would send it back for some further consideration.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it. I'm going to just turn this back to Mr. Soya. Again, I appreciate you got this information at say 11 o'clock this morning to yourself, Mr. Sharp, or anybody in our planning department. You finished your remarks last time that regardless of the elevation of a floor, we're still doing a construction within a floodway. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. So it is true that we did not receive this till just hours before. So, I mean, from that perspective, we have not had that much time to really look into the details of that report. My first read of it is that it's the engineering consultant has identified the floor of this building to be above this elevation that he has calculated to be a 100-year flood plus wave uprush elevation, and it's above that by, I believe, only a couple of inches or so. And that, however, from a planning policy point of view, this would still be considered to be located within the floodway of Lake Muskoka. That's the footprint of this building and the footprint of this enlargement, per se, of a former structure, and that's why that would be the standpoint of staff with regards to this application still.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to, I suppose, David, or Sam, I want to suppose this. When we move on this property and put the signs up, clearly there are a number of issues and problems. Is there an occupancy permit on this property? Is this building allowed to be used?
Mr. Soya?
It's my understanding that the building department issued an order to comply when it was determined that the building was constructed. The work that was done without a building permit.
Right. So thank you. If I might supplemental, I know that in Torrance there was a scenario where we did not allow the people to go into their property who used the existing structure and built onto it, which seems to me is exactly the same scenario here. And when I went by this particular place on my Sea-Doo on Saturday, there were, I don't know, 3 or 4 cars there. I mean, it's in full usage. I'm really interested in that because it just seems like it's I won't say a double standard, but it seems very confusing to me as a taxpayer.
I'm not sure, Mr. Soy, if you can answer that, but from an occupancy perspective, whether Mr. Pink, I don't see Mr. Snyder on the phone, but I'm not sure if we can deem the building inhabitable based on where it's built at this particular point. At one point, it was a habitable building, and there's certain portions of it that would remain habitable. I see Mr. Sharp has turned on his camera. Maybe Bryce, you want to chime in?
No, just to confirm, I think what your understanding is, Your Worship. I don't think at this point we have the ability to confirm one way or the other whether the issuance of an order to comply would require the building not to be occupied. That is something I'd have to take up with Mr. Snyder. But I don't, based on my experience, I don't think that is the case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn just a quick question to council at this particular point before we read this again. The applicant's agent has requested another deferral of this because of the late issuance, suggesting that our staff haven't had a chance to really digest the flood elevation or not. I will say I've heard from Mr. Soya that regardless of the elevation of the floor, the building is still within a floodway, and that I'm sensing that same perspective. When you add waves and a couple of inches, the stringers of whatever the floor would obviously still be getting wet and causing electrical issues potentially along the way. Councillor Bridgman, did you want to chime in?
Thank you, Mayor Harding. To be very honest with you, there are so many issues with this property that the flooding wasn't the only one, and that seems to be what we're talking about, is the level of the floor. I won't be changing my vote on this, because when asked to bring it into compliance, the answer was, we want exemptions on everything we've done. And so I am not prepared to change my vote. You were looking for input, so I thought I would give it to you.
So unless I see something different, someone waving their hand at me, I think I'm actually going to read this resolution and let council vote on it accordingly. Again, we did not support this at Planning Committee, so we'll read first and foremost. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-14 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Fangrad Rule 7, 12, 25 be read a first and second time. I'll call the question. All those in favor? I think that was a mistake. All those opposed? Madam Clerk, that is unanimously opposed. That is defeated. Thank you very much. Which means I also don't need to read a minor amendment, nor do I need to read a third time and finally pass. So from an impacts perspective, Mr. Sharp, I think committee, yes, we have seen, if I can sort of summarize, we've seen letters of support of this structure. There's no question, but our planning staff, our district staff, our bylaws, our issues regarding floodways, and a small property, this council, I think, has supporting the safety of a building not being built in a floodway, and the egregiousness of the oversized building and expansion towards the waterfront area. So I think that would be the nature of why we have made our decision accordingly. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, final one. Mr. Sawyer, is this one for you? And that's Danny, Recreational Corporation. Oh, Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The next application is Diane Recreational Corp. You may remember that it was an exemption to provide a maximum permitted length for a proposed two-story boathouse and dock. In May, Planning Committee recommended to council that the application be approved, subject to the dock length being reduced. Several letters of support were received by neighbors, and there was no concerns from the district or township departments. There's one minor amendment. The dock length has been reduced from 93.7 feet to 89.7 feet. The revised plan can be found on page 181 of the agenda package. I have no further comments or concerns, but would be happy to assist council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, council, I'm going to read the first and second reading, moved by Councillor Hayes, or excuse me, Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. And that is be it resolved that bylaw 2021-36 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Danny Recreational Corporation 4.8.12 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Minor amendment as mentioned by Ms. Walker. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2021-36 Danny Recreation Corp. And this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation and is hereby approved prior to third reading. The minor amendment shall consist of permitting a dock length of 90 feet or reduction. Any further comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I think we're good. That's carried. Thank you. Third reading, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-36 Daniel Recreation Corporation be read a third time and finally passed. Any further comments? All those in favor? Councilor Nishikawa, did you vote in favor? It's hard to see your hand where your camera is. Or are you opposed? No, you're in favor? There we go. Thank you. That is carried. And I think from an impact, Ms. Walker, I believe the fact that the neighbors were concerned about the length of the dock on the boathouse that was moved in. And as such, the minor amendment that we received today. From an impact, thank you. Okay, I can go back now. Oh, I was going to do 9A. I'll go to Treadway in a second. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Razan. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and that is bylaw 2021-91 to designate site plan control, Lot 20 Concession G Majora Lehman, Rule 6, 2434, and bylaw 2021-92 to designate site plan control Part 3 and 4 of Concession 13 Majora, and that is Danny Recreational Corporation 4812. Designating site plan control. All those in favor? Here we go. That's carried. Thank you. Treadway, and I think we got here. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's straightforward. It's just a rezoning or a partial rezoning from Environmental Protection EP1 to Rural RU2. Staff have no concerns, and no concerns were raised by the public, the district, or circulated township departments. No minor amendments are required. Thank you. Perfect.
Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-40 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Treadway Rule 41324-1 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-40 Treadway be read a third time and finally passed. I'll ask if there are any final comments or questions. Seeing none. All those in favor? And that is unanimously carried. Okay, we're going to go into closed session. I believe that's the end of our public viewing at this particular point. And but we're going to take a quick 10-minute break before we roll into public or into closed session here. So let me read. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be resolved that council in closed session convene at 4:24 p.m. for litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and that is 1 LPAT matter, labor relations or employee negotiations, collective bargaining matter, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. 2 personal matters. Oh, just 1 now. We're going to revise that to 1. Pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.